Pathological Demand Avoidance, in brackets PDA, where is the humility, empathy, and respect by Richard Woods, London South Bank University PhD student. So, yeah, moving on. So, I have a few conflicts of interest. So, I'm developing various tools for PDA, such as a Pathological Demand Avoidance belief scale, and I do earn some income from delivering training sessions on PDA, and I reluctantly advocate for PDA to be diagnosed as a standalone diagnostic category. So, just call it categories because that's what they are. So a bit about my perspective. I'm diagnosed autistic in 2012. I do meet an Advocacy's PDA behaviour profile, but I'm not emotionally attached to it. I am no longer basing my identity on such categories because I favour a transdiagnostic or cross-categorical approach to mapping and supporting such features, and I think we should be moving to exclusively using transdiagnostic approach in the future. My agenda is for at least inclusive, good quality, scientific based research and practice. And my PhD is investigating PDA, and I am based in a critical autism studies / disability studies group at London South Bank University. And this is my interpretation of literature. Others may disagree. So, introduction. So, yeah, this video should cover a case study on PDA Profile of ASD Advocacy, and I'm going to situate it briefly in broader literature on PDA, and going to briefly mention what typical standards look like, and give some three problematic claims in the case study, note some conflict of interest, which seem to be there, and issue of empathy, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail, and then kind of finally conclude on where is the humility, empathy, and respect for other people's views in this video. So, case study anyway. So this case study in question, it's by Small Talk Speech Language Therapies post on Facebook on the 8th of June 2023. So you can see it had some impact from its followers and stuff. There's a lot to unpack in this, which I don't necessarily have time to go into, but I'm just going to read it out for others' ease of access. So, just reading our diagnostic report, which diagnoses in brackets extreme demand avoidance, also known as PDA, close quotation marks, sorry, in a child who loves routine, predictability, hates change, transitions, and openly says he doesn't want friends. Yes, he has demand avoidance, but it's completely illogical why. He becomes overwhelmed by sensory, linguistic, and environmental stresses. The team also recommends visual support, social stories, and social skill groups. Shall I send them the PDA Society's assessment guide? And quote. So, moving on, the situating current status of PDA within the kind of UK. So, most researchers tend to assume that PDA is within the autism spectrum due to their understanding of autism. Again, caregivers are often highly motivated to take part in research. And this is a quote from Anonymous 2020. Interested in the concept of PDA largely centres on the UK. It is at present a culture-bound concept. Again, it's been noted by researchers investigating PDA as a form of autism. That interest in PDA in the UK has risen sharply over the last 10 years, and it way outstrips its evidence base. Due to campaigning efforts, persons can be on the lookout for PDA, and it is a potential source of bias. So, yeah, I mean, PDA is quite highly controversial, and this is openly acknowledged within the literature. So, also, multiple independent parties have reviewed PDA's evidence base and have concluded there's little to no good quality evidence base to suggest what PDA is or what features associated with it, and these reviews have equally respected divergent opinion on PDA. So, for record, that's the Royal College of Psychiatry, that's British Psychological Society, that's a systematic review based in Norway, this is a systematic review based in Belgium, I think. And that's NICE based in the UK. So where's my mouse gone? Yeah. So, and also PDA has been quite consistently challenged over the last 20 years. So since 2002. So moving on to typical kind of standards. So, this is a quote by Nick Chown, et al. 2019. So it's responding to a letter basically questioning Cook for Society 2018, which indicated a potential relationship between post-traumatic stress disorder and applied behaviour analysis. So just going to read it out. Leafertel stressed that conclusions should not be designed to support a preconceived notion or belief, implying that they believe Cook for Society study fails on this account. However, she only hypothesised a link between ABA and PTSD. It is perfectly good research practice to hypothesise. The issue of a preconceived notion or belief could be levelled at Leaf and his colleagues given their conflict of interest. Yeah, this should be quite highly. One should note that this could be one could note that the case study by Small Talk Therapy by Small Talk probably has a preconceived notion of what PDA looks like. So this is a quote from Damien Milson's 2014 article, kind of questioning autism interventions, basically questioning like what they're doing, what are they exactly intervening with. So the quote matters because it's kind of talking about what happens when people become overly invested to the point of becoming zealot, becoming zealous in favour of a particular outlook on a particular topic. So yeah, whatever approach favoured, it's important that such zealotry be avoided by practitioners working with autistic children, since, in my view, it will lead to poor practice, as Ariane Zurcher, 2012, a mother of an autistic child, describes. When she did not show the sort of monumental leaps promised, ABA therapists said it was because we were at fault. Never once did any of the therapists, supervisor, or agency waver in their firm belief that ABA was a solid, scientifically backed methodology. It was spoken as as facts. Similarly, John Lubbock in the UK, a father of a boy with autism who follows an ABA program, was an advocate of the principles of ABA was critical of the facts that often the therapists and some of the supervisors had a fundamental lack of wider knowledge and expertise, and that this will tend to make people inflexible as they have no response to problems other than more loaths. This concern can equally be applied to other interventions where the proponents and or practitioners only have knowledge of that particular intervention and also sometimes a relative knowledge of autism. I would argue that this quote and issues with people being being zealous, or that often kind of PDA Profile ASD advocacy is often quite displayed of being zealotry. I'd also point out that this quote by Damien Milson, the quote text in the 2014 Milson article, has massive parallels to the case study here in terms of PDA Profile of ASD advocacy, and I am putting PDA Profile of ASD in quotation marks whenever I say it. So yeah, who's at fault if PDA doesn't look like their preconceived notions of it? Well, it's the people with different views that fault. The people at fault, it cannot be the PDA Profile ASD supporters. It must be other people who are wrong. Well, we'll touch upon that in a bit later. So, moving on to the three examples of problematic claims by the quote. So, the post by Small Talk had issues with personal kind of adherence to demands and other issues with transitions and stuff. Elizabeth Newson did three studies as part of their 2003 article. This is from Study B. So what they did is they compared 50 cases of PDA versus 20 cases of autistic disorder and 20 cases of Asperger's syndrome. So this is back during the DSM-4, which had autism subtypes, which were the three accepted autism subtypes were pervasive mental disorder not otherwise specified, autistic disorder, and Asperger's syndrome. So the squares are autism, the diamonds are Asperger's syndrome, and the circles are PDA. So I've got a big, massive, fat green arrow next to this circle for PDA, which is over adherence to routines, and that's because 60% of this PDA cases adhere to routines, which indicates that a good majority of Newson's PDA cases adhere to routines. This image is exactly it's part of the previous image because I've kind of obviously cropped it, but it's a slightly bit more clearer, so kind of a bit more in focus. So you can kind of see adherence to routines here frequency on the side, and a big massive black arrow this time going over pointing to it. So yeah, I'm trying to point out that there is some empirical evidence, admittedly poor quality evidence, but contradicts kind of Smalltalk's views on the topic. Moving on, Smalltalk seems to take issue with the use of visual support in its diagnostic report. I'm going to point out that Phil Christie wrote an article in 2007, which some people used as a basis for educational guidance for PDA, and he has written a couple of quotes around kind of visual clarification methods. So, the first one, the visual clarification methods, i.e. like symbol strips, written messages, cartoon drawing, etc., that are so successful for children with autism can also be successful for children with PDA, but often for slightly different reasons, in that they can be used in a way that depersonalises demands. So that's on page 9. Again on page 9, there's this other quote which says ground rules need to be as few as possible, but maintained using techniques such as passing over responsibility, e.g., I'm sorry, but it's a health and safety requirement. Depersonalising through the use of imaginary characters, visual clarification, etc., and given choices that allow the child to have a feeling of autonomy. Again, page 9. This article was republished by the Autism Education Trust, used for a number of years by the Autism Education Trust as educational guidance. I'd also point out that during that time period, Phil Christie was on various Autism Education Trust boards, so there probably is a conflict of interest there by Phil Christie. But moving on, just the final of the three kind of problematic claims by it. So the case study kind of opens up to the floor, but basically strongly suggests that Smalltalk wanted to send the people who are diagnosed PDA in this kind of case study, PDA Society's kind of document which which in my view pretends to be clinical guidance of PDA. So just again quoting it, shall I send them the PDA Society assessment guidance? I don't think this is assessment guidance. I think is a highly biased research report. Because this document is based on the views of 12 high bias clinicians which were invited by the PDA Society to contribute their views. And if you pay attention to the document, it turns around and tells you that 11 of those 12 are based in private practice. So one can argue that the people contributing to this document, including the PDA Society, have conflicts of interests, because obviously PDA is controversial. There's obviously a lack of consensus over what it is. There's obviously a lack of evidence over what PDA is. And the vast majority of these 12 clinicians are based in private practice. Obviously, the PDA Society has vested interest because it obviously campaigns and advocates for PDA as a form of autism. Also, this document has many issues. I don't have time to go into full issues of it or even make a video for it, because the video would be like probably 2 to 3 hours long, because I literally created almost a 300-page PDF going over issues of it. There's 300 pages because they're all just Twitter tweets, just a massive thread over like 2 days of me just going through it like line by line at times, going, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, and also explaining why it's a problem. I'll put a link in the video description to why it's problematic. But one issue is there's many bold claims in this document. So so these 12 high bias clinicians suggested that with increased awareness, there has been some over-identification by other practitioners. That's a bold claim, and if you kind of go mindful of the kind of case study, I would suggest that Smalltalk views this kind of PDA diagnosis to be an over-identification example, and I did say over-identification in quotation marks because I am quite skeptical that it is over-diagnosed. Moving on, so this is a quote from Botemer et al. Et al. 2021. That's a bit of a tongue twister. Page 5. So this is was a study looking at a bunch of early autism interventions and disclosure of conflicts of interest. So this is kind of a good definition to work with. So conflicts of interest can be potential, i.e. benefits have not yet occurred or are not occurring at the time of research, but could occur in the future, kind of close brackets, kind of actual, i.e. kind of benefits have already occurred or are continuing to occur, or perceived, i.e. there are no potential actual benefits but have accrued or could accrue to the author, but such benefits are a reasonable perception. One of the most discussed types of conflicts of interest are those that involve direct financial transactions. They are also extended to professional or personal relations, ideological commitments, and/or religious political views. So, going to link this to it. So this is from this PDA Society document. So a couple of quotes from them. So it's from page two of it. So the PDA Society would like to thank the following contributors for sharing their experience and expertise in producing this practice guidance in alphabetical order: Phil Christie, Dr. Gloria Dura Villa, Dr. Ian Anson Hart, Libby Hill. There's a reason why I mentioned Libby Hill in a moment. So Libby Hill is listed as given the bio of Libby Hill, it states from page 26, Libby has over 35 years experience working for much of that time as a lead speech and language therapist in the NHS before setting up an independent practice, Smalltalk, in 2007. She specialises in autism, PDA, and sector mutism, and regularly acts as an expert witness. If you go on a Smalltalk speech and language therapist website, it will tell you on the About section that Smalltalk speech and language therapy was set up by Libby Hill, an award-winning speech and language therapist, to bridge the ever-widening gap between the increasing number of children with communication problems and the shortfall within NHS. So there seems to be a direct link between Smalltalk and this document that's been recommended by Smalltalk. So as in, i.e., Libby Hill is obviously involved with Smalltalk speech and language therapy, and was one of these 12 highly biased experts who've contributed to creating this document, this high proper document by the PDA Society. And this document has been obviously has been asked if it should be recommended and sent to the team who diagnosed this case of PDA. So moving on. So yeah, and the case, if you remember, had get quite a bit of interest. And this post by Smalltalk was obviously sent out to their 10,000 followers that they have. It's obviously not necessarily high numbers with like 34 comments and 40 reactions to the 3 shares, but they obviously could be more. The reason why I'm commenting on this is because the question about like should the PDA Society's document be sent to the team that diagnosed PDA in this kind of case study, the way it's discussed, it's suggesting that there's a shared knowledge base between Smalltalk and its followers. So basically, there's enough people within Smalltalk's followers who have the same worldview and perspective on PDA, which is indicative that PDA as a profile of autism is actually a culture-bound concept in the UK, which suggests that the observation by Niles at 2020 is actually correct. Can one argue does Smalltalk really stand to benefit from advocating for its position in PDA? I would say probably yes, almost certainly yes. But would point out it's unclear if Libby Hill actually authored the post. So putting that out there and recognising it. This sort of going on to like issues of empathising with other people's perspectives on PDA. And it's not just Smalltalk which has got issues with this. So this is from Graham Mattel 2020 quote. So it's describing potential issues with the Extreme Demand Avoidance Questionnaire, which is an observer-rated screening tool meant to be used for research purposes for PDA. But multiple studies, like 2-3 studies, have shown that it seems to have a ceiling effect, or it struggles to quantitatively differentiate PDA features are kind of more extreme frequencies. So just going to say the quote. So, for instance, child A may engage in demand avoidant behaviour multiple times every day to the extent that the family's lifestyle is compromised, while child B might avoid demands once or twice a week with minimal disruptions to routines. In both cases, parents may rate the item "my child's obsessively resists and avoids other demands and requests" as very true. However, there is variation in frequency, the degree, nature, and the impact of these behaviours between families. I have issues with this quote and this assumption that there's a minimal disruption to the routines if a child only shows this PDA features like once or twice a week, or even once a day. If you actually consider how PDA is constructed and what's pathologised in PDA, you would notice that the vast majority or significant majority of these features are intrinsically problematic, not only for the person expressing them, but also for those around them. So I literally just pulled these features from the 11 revised PDA DISCO item. So the DISCO is a semi-structured interview used to diagnose autism and PDA that's produced by the National Autistic Society. And this quote is from the supplementary material to Analysis 2016A, because it literally gives you the 16 the 11 revised PDA disco items open access, so you can literally see all of them. And I just pulled out all the kind of basically problematic features that would cause issues, not only for the person expressing them, but for those around them. So I'm going to read out the quote. So, like, tantrum, scratches, bites, kicks, or passive resists, runs away, hides, removes clothes, uses doll or puppet to make excuse. If all else fails, screams, hits, kicks in a panic, tearing up another person's work, pulling off some spectacles, taking pants down and urinating on the floor, injuring someone else's pet animal, kind of lies or cheat or steal, like example, kind of like switching between moods or doing like loving and hating things at the same time. So I hate you in a sweet voice while hugging you, or may hug others too long and too hard. Like they frequently tease, bully, refuse to take turns, make trouble. Like the harassing people, like doing like writing threatening letters, like making verbal threats, stalking and making untrue accusations of sexual abuse. And this is a significant amount of the features that are being looked for when assessing for PDA. And it should be obvious to anyone that if these features are being expressed like once a day or 2 or 3 times a week, this is going to be affecting a person's quality of life, for not only for the person expressing, but also for those people around them on the receiving end of these behaviours. Which is what I say here. So yeah, these will affect other people's lives, irrespective of the frequency of how many times it's expressed per week. It's also quite important because the DSM-5, which is the main American Diagnostic Manual, it acknowledges that it's problematic working out when a feature's become pathological. So all kind of categories within the DSM-5, they will have some kind of clause based on like this, based on the statement. So disturbing causes clinically significant distress or impairment in either social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. So this is an or term, not an and term. So if these kind of features are having a massive, having an impact in either kind of school, social life, family home setting, that is enough to make that demand avoidance pathological, because it's literally meets a threshold to be pathologicalized as. So therefore, it is literally pathological demand avoidance by definition. So I'd also point out that in this case study, if a clinician has diagnosed PDA, they've done it because there is a reason, there is a need to diagnose it. There's a clinical need to diagnose it in that situation. They haven't just done it on the whim, they would have done it because there's a need to do it. So obviously, from my perspective, it seems to be a lack of kind of empathizing or respecting others' views, this other clinician's views or clinicians' views on the topic. And I'll point out that I'm assuming that most people watching this would have been aware of the recent Panorama investigation, like private ADHD diagnoses, and how like these 3 private clinics have basically, or at least one of them has challenged the kind of the NHS clinicians' views on ADHD and of their assessments and stuff. My point here is that in situations like this, where you have one clinician, like Small Talk here, or clinicians from Small Talk questioning a clinician or whatever clinician's views and diagnosing PDA, is that both groups can challenge other people's clinical perspective. So it kind of shows the vulnerability and the kind of weakness of the position of Small Talk, and actually to question the PDA diagnosis in question here in the case study. So yeah, we can get into the end of the talk. So this is just me bringing up the case study again as a reference for you, because I'm going to ask some questions about it. So just going to read it out again. So yeah, just reading a diagnostic report which diagnoses extreme demand avoidance, also known as PDA. I'm suggesting that's a typo because I'm pretty certain it would be known as PDA in the full quote. But yeah, just carrying on. So as a child who loves routine, predictability, hates change, transitions, and opening says he doesn't want friends. Yes, he's demand avoidant, but it's completely logical why. He becomes overwhelmed by sensory, linguistic, and environmental stresses. The team also recommend visual support, social stories, and social skill groups. Shall I send them the PDA Society assessment guide as kind of a guiding kind of guide? It doesn't matter if the demand avoidance is logical or not. It would still, if it meets the threshold for being pathological, it'd still be intrinsically pathological demand avoidance, irrespective of what kind of Small Talk thinks about it. So I'm going to conclude by asking these questions of this case study by Small Talk. So, where's the humility? humility? Like, where is the respect for divergent views on PDA? Where is the empathy for others' experiences and opinions on PDA? Where is a critical reflection of one's position and conduct on PDA? And also, like, who has a pathological need to control whom? So, these are my contact details if you want to get a hold of it. So there's my email address, which is richardwoods, autism@gmail.com, my Twitter handle of richard_autism, links to my ResearchGate profile, which has most of my research on there, and links to the channel. And there's obviously no questions because of the video, but it's a generic site which I'm just reusing. There are 5 reference sites which you can pause on if you want to read them in more detail. I'm not going to linger on them loads because you can obviously pause on them. So this is the second slide, reference slide, and a third. Site story. I originally started this recording before, but I realised that I referenced the wrong 2014 Milton article, so I had to restart it and edit the slides. The second to last one, hence my kind of traditional "Are we there yet?" kind of wordplay at the top, and the final slide, reference slide. So thank you for your time. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you've gained much from it. So hopefully see you again in the future. So bye.